In this video, we will examine Jesus' prophecy in Mark chapter 13. He says, "For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in one place after another. There will also be food shortages. These are a beginning of pangs of distress." Let us focus on Jesus' prediction about wars and earthquakes. According to Jesus, as the end approaches, there should be remarkably more earthquakes. That should happen at the same time as there will be many wars and food shortages. Someone could ask, how is this possible? How is it possible that in the end times there will be more earthquakes? Is there a scientific reason for remarkably more earthquakes in the end time? Yes, indeed there is. Such things don't just happen randomly. In fact, geological activity has its cycles of less activity followed by increased activity. The same is true with the frequency and amplitude of wars. There are calmer periods in history that are followed by periods of greater military conflicts. Simply explained, it happens in this way. An emerging empire defeats its rivals. This is then followed by a longer time of peace. Then during this time of peace, a new competing empire starts to form. It takes decades, even more. Finally, the emerging empire challenges the existing empire, and there are usually great wars in which the previous empire is defeated. Then when the new empire has defeated the previous empire, peace follows for a longer time, until again a new empire emerges to challenge the existing empire. That is what we see happening now. The USA became the supreme power after the Second World War. And after the Cold War, when the USSR was dissolved, the USA was the unchallenged superpower. But now the USA feels it is threatened by the BRICS coalition, especially by China. China is gaining strength day by day, and the USA is unable to stop it. This seems to terrify the US administration, and China's ally, Iran, has for the first time managed to seriously bomb Israel, the ally of the USA. Also, Russia, an ally of China, is constantly gaining ground in Ukraine, despite the West's support. Is there any hope that these conflicts will be resolved soon? Realistically, looking at the situation, it will not calm down before one side is defeated. And that will take a few years, as it was with World War I and World War II. But what about the higher frequency of earthquakes that should occur in the end time? Researchers study statistics and compile graphs to see what is the trajectory of events. Their method is simply explained in this way. If they see that something increases for years or decades, then they expect that to continue until it reaches its peak and runs out of energy. Additionally, when the researchers see that something increases faster and faster, then they can expect it to end like an explosion. It is like a dam that starts to leak. The leakage is small in the beginning, but it gets worse and worse until the whole dam collapses. That is what statistics show about wars and earthquakes and diseases. There are periods of calm followed by periods of conflicts that accelerate, and finally they reach their peak and then lose their energy, and subsequently calm down. So let's look at some charts. Here is a chart from ourworldindata.org. The chart shows deaths in state-based conflicts in the world since 1946. We see that the number of deaths decreased until 2005. But after that we see in the chart that the trend reversed. Therefore, after 2005, the number of deaths in conflicts has grown. So that is what we can expect to continue. Here is another chart showing the same thing. Here we see again that the number of deaths caused by wars decreased after the Second World War. But the turning point was in 2005. This chart, as we see, shows that deaths from wars have been increasing the last 20 years. Here we have another chart showing the number of deaths in wars since 1800. Here we see periods of less deaths in wars, followed by an explosion of deaths during the First World War and then during the Second World War. So again, statistically we can expect in the coming few years an explosion of deaths in wars, similar to the First and Second World Wars. But what about earthquakes? What do the statistics show? Are they increasing in numbers? This chart shows the number of significant earthquakes from 1494 to 2023. Here we see a gradual increase in the frequency of significant earthquakes. Is this a real increase of earthquakes, or is it just a result of more accurate measuring and reporting? Some have claimed that Jesus' prediction of earthquakes in one place after another does not mean an actual increase of earthquakes, in order to make it fit the time from 1914. But will there really come a time of unusually frequent earthquakes? Yes, indeed. Have you, for example, noticed that this year in the news we have heard about many earthquakes? That is not just because of increased reporting. Martin Armstrong published this on his website July 1, 2025. Ring of Fire is becoming active on schedule. Question: Marty, your model on volcanoes had correctly forecast this surge in activity in the Ring of Fire for 2025. Do you view this as part of the warning that we are headed into global cooling, rather than warming? Why does the media refuse to highlight all the correct events your computer has been able to forecast when nobody else comes close? Answer: this has been my concern. Climate News just reported. The Pacific Ring of Fire has witnessed an alarming surge in seismic activity throughout 2024 and early 2025. I have tried to help society, but those who opposed me cannot even now admit that what they were doing was taking control of the computer by sheer force. I reported back in 2022 that the low would be in 2019, which was the point from which the activity would begin to rise. As you see, we have a string of directional changes into 2030. However, take a close look and you will see a panic cycle in 2031. In this article he referred to the Climate News article. Here is more about it. Here it reads, for example, the Pacific Ring of Fire has witnessed an alarming surge in seismic activity throughout 2024 and early 2025, with earthquake frequencies reaching levels not seen in decades. According to the United States Geological Survey, the region recorded over 15,000 earthquakes of magnitude 4.0 or higher in 2024 alone, a 23% increase from the previous year. This dramatic spike has caught the attention of geologists worldwide, who are now scrambling to understand what's driving this sudden burst of activity. The Ring of Fire, which encompasses roughly 75% of the world's active volcanoes and 90% of earthquakes, seems to be entering a period of heightened instability. Recent data shows that major fault lines from Chile to Japan are showing signs of increased stress, prompting emergency preparedness protocols across multiple nations. I will leave a link to the article in the description if you want to look closer into it. So in fact, we have entered a period of significantly increased seismic activity and wars. According to Martin Armstrong's statistical research, next year will have significantly more international wars. In one of his latest interviews he says, our computer on the international war level has a panic cycle in 2026. So I think you're going to start seeing it perk up again from August on this year. And I said there's nobody interested in peace. Nobody. They all listen to the neocons who basically run NATO. The other wildcard out there is climate. The Ring of Fire is intensifying greatly. And throughout history, it is what our computer's been projecting. We're heading into a cooling period, not a warming period, that often takes place largely with the volcanic eruptions. It throws so much ash up. You can look. There is a book. I think the year without the summer was 1816 when Krakatoa went off, and it was snowing in July in New York City. Unfortunately, it looks like that's where we're headed, into a cooling period, and when that happens you also get a rise in disease. So I would be expecting more of a sharp decline in the population, particularly after 2032. So according to statistical models of Martin Armstrong, we should expect the signs of the last days to manifest in a significant way the coming 7 years up to 2032. More wars, more earthquakes, more volcanoes, more food shortages, more diseases. I hope God's kingdom comes sooner, but we cannot know the exact day or hour. But this seems to be the foretold time of the end. Thanks for watching and see you next time.